What is this thing we call consciousness? Is it the active force that pilots our bodies, making our decisions and guiding our every action? Or is it something more passive, like a mere shadow that faithfully follows the physical processes of our brain without ever influencing them? This is one of the most profound and perplexing questions we can ask about our own existence. The answer, whichever it may be, matters a great deal. It fundamentally alters how we perceive ourselves, our choices, and our very sense of free will. The question itself presents a startling paradox. The feeling of being in control is the most intimate experience we have, yet science presents compelling reasons to doubt it. Think for a moment about a beautifully intricate movie playing on a giant screen. The story unfolds with drama, color, and sound, capturing our complete attention. The film feels incredibly real, evoking laughter, tears, and suspense. However, the events happening within the movie have absolutely no power to change the projector that is casting the light. The projector is the source, the machine that generates the entire show. In one prominent view of the mind, our brain is the projector, a complex biological machine operating according to physical laws. Consciousness, in this analogy, is the movie itself. It is a spectacular and compelling display, but perhaps it is one that cannot reach back and alter the machinery that creates it. This idea can be deeply unsettling because it challenges our most basic intuitions about who we are. We live our lives under the assumption that our thoughts, feelings, and intentions are the primary drivers of our behavior. We believe we choose to get out of bed, decide what to eat for breakfast, and formulate plans for the future, based on our conscious deliberations. The suggestion that these conscious experiences might be nothing more than a running commentary on decisions already made by our brains can feel like a direct assault on our identity. It raises the possibility that the I we hold so dear is not the captain of the ship, but simply a passenger watching the journey unfold. The paradox deepens when we consider the richness and intensity of our inner world, the sharp sting of regret, the profound warmth of love, the cold grip of fear. These experiences feel not only real, but also immensely powerful. They seem to push and pull us in different directions, acting as the very motivators for our most significant life choices. To relegate these potent feelings to the status of mere afterthoughts seems to diminish their importance. How can something that feels so causally effective be an illusion? This is the core of the mystery, a puzzle that sits at the intersection of philosophy, neuroscience, and our everyday lived experience. It's really puzzling. To explore this puzzle, we must first understand a key concept, often hidden behind a rather large word, epiphenomenon. Stripped of its jargon, an epiphenomenon is simply a secondary effect or a byproduct. It is something that is produced by a primary process, but does not, in turn, have any power to influence that process. It is a real phenomenon, something you can observe, but it lacks causal efficacy. It is an effect, but never a cause. This idea is central to the argument that our consciousness might not be in the driver's seat. It suggests our mental life is an output, not an input. A classic and helpful metaphor is that of a steam locomotive. The engine burns coal to heat water, creating steam that drives pistons, which in turn move the massive wheels and propel the train forward along the tracks. As a byproduct of this process, the train releases a loud whistle and billows of white steam rise from its chimney. They are undeniable evidence that the engine is running. However, the whistle does not push the train forward, and the steam in the air does not turn the wheels. The engine's internal mechanics are the true cause of the motion. The steam is just a side effect, an epiphenomenon. Applying this metaphor to the mind, the brain becomes the intricate engine of the train. Its complex network of neurons, firing in specific patterns, is the fundamental process that causes our bodies to act. According to the epiphenomenalist view, consciousness, our feelings, thoughts, sensations, is like the steam and the whistle. It is generated by the brain's activity, a constant and vivid report on what the engine is doing. But just like the steam, it has no power to influence the engine itself. It is a fascinating and complex readout of our biological machinery, but it is not the force that makes the machinery go. Imagine you accidentally touch a scorching hot stove. In a fraction of a second, your hand recoils before you are even fully aware of what happened. The sequence of events, according to neuroscience, begins with sensory nerves in your skin, sending urgent signals up your arm to your spinal cord and brain. These signals trigger a reflex arc, causing muscles in your arm to contract and pull your hand away. Only after this physical action is underway does the conscious experience of intense pain and the thought, Ouch, that hurts. Fully register in your mind. It feels as if the pain caused you to move, but the epiphenomenalist view argues that the feeling of pain was just the brain's delayed report on an action it had already initiated. So yeah, it's kind of surprising. This brings us to the most difficult part of the puzzle. If our conscious experiences are merely side effects, why do they feel so incredibly strong and influential? Why did evolution bother to produce such a rich and often overwhelming inner theater, if it serves no functional purpose? The feeling of happiness isn't just a mild awareness. It is a powerful force that makes us seek out certain experiences again and again. Similarly, the feeling of fear is not just a passive notification of danger. It is a visceral, heart-pounding sensation that compels us to run, that compels us to hide, that compels us to fight. These feelings don't seem like optional extras, they feel like the very core of our motivational system. Consider the role of emotions in learning and social behavior. We teach our children to feel pride in their accomplishments. We teach them to feel guilt for their misdeeds. We teach them to feel shame for their misdeeds. We do this because we believe these feelings will guide their future actions, encouraging positive behavior, discouraging negative ones. If these feelings were truly epiphenomenal, with no causal power, then this entire system of moral education would be based on a fundamental illusion. We would be like spectators shouting advice at a movie screen, with no ability to change the plot, the very structure of our societies. Our laws. Our interpersonal relationships is built on the assumption that feelings matter and that they cause us to act. Furthermore, from a biological perspective, consciousness is an expensive trait. The human brain consumes a disproportionate amount of the body's energy. The complex processes that give rise to conscious awareness are surely part of that metabolic cost. Evolution is famously economical, typically weeding out features that do not provide some sort of survival advantage. If consciousness is just a useless byproduct, a pretty light show with no function, it is difficult to explain why natural selection would have favored its development and refinement over millions of years. This evolutionary argument suggests that consciousness must be doing something useful, even if we do not fully understand what that is. The puzzle, therefore, is the stark contrast between the scientific argument for epiphenomenalism and the overwhelming evidence from our own lives. Our subjective experience shouts that our thoughts cause our actions. Our social structures are built upon this belief. The principles of evolution hint that it must be so. Yet some interpretations of neuroscience suggest that our brain makes decisions before we are consciously aware of them. This creates a deep and persistent tension. How can we reconcile the feeling of being an author of our actions with the possibility that we are merely reading a story that has already been written by our neurons? Yeah, that's the puzzle. This fundamental tension gives rise to two opposing views on the nature of consciousness. The first, more intuitive, is the view that the mind is an active cause. Called dualism or interactionism, it matches everyday language. I decided to go for a walk. I moved my arm because I wanted to pick up the glass. The mind, thoughts, desires, intentions, exerts control over brain and body. It is the captain steering the ship. It is the CEO making executive decisions. Consciousness as the pinnacle of our being, the source of agency and freedom. The brain is hardware, the mind is the software programmer. But a challenge remains. How does a non-physical mind interact with a physical brain? Science finds no point of contact where immaterial thoughts push material neurons. The ghost in the machine problem has troubled philosophers and remains a major hurdle. The opposing view. The mind is a passive effect. Epiphenomenalism. Aligned with physicalism, where everything is caused physically, the brain operates by physics and chemistry. Consciousness is what it feels like when the brain runs complex operations. The mind is a chronicle, not a commander. It is the movie that shows what the projector is doing. The story told by the ship about its journey, not the captain who charts the course. It preserves physical laws by denying causal powers to the mind. Support comes from neurological studies. Benjamin Libet's 1980s experiments the readiness potential, detected hundreds of milliseconds before reported intention to act, interpreted as, the brain decided to move before conscious awareness. The conscious feeling came later, a report on a process already in motion. This suggests consciousness is a trailing indicator, not a leading cause. However, the story is not necessarily that simple, and the debate is far from settled. The stark choice between the mind as an all-powerful captain and a powerless spectator may be a false dichotomy. There could be a middle ground that acknowledges the insights from both perspectives. Perhaps consciousness is not the direct, immediate cause of every action, but it still plays a crucial, albeit more subtle role in guiding our behavior over time. This would allow it to be both a product of brain activity and an influential factor in future brain activity, creating a complex feedback loop rather than a simple one-way street. Let's consider a different analogy: the dashboard of a car. Imagine you are driving and the oil pressure warning light suddenly illuminates. The light itself is not the problem, it is a symptom, a report on a mechanical issue deep within the engine. In this sense, the light is an epiphenomenon of the engine's malfunction. It did not cause the low oil pressure. However, the light is not useless. When you, the driver, see this light, you are prompted to act. You pull over to the side of the road, turn off the engine call for assistance. The light caused you to change your behavior, preventing catastrophic engine failure. Perhaps our conscious feelings, like pain or joy, function in a similar way. The immediate reflexive action like sai, rao, ombi wax, rao, wow, bon chandid bi, rao the gao walao, like pulling a hand from a hot stove, may be initiated by the brain before the conscious feeling fully arises. The feeling of pain that follows is like the warning light. It is a report on the event, but it is a report that is incredibly salient and attention-grabbing. This powerful signal then feeds back into our cognitive systems. It teaches us a lesson: stoves are dangerous. This conscious experience helps us form memories and create future plans to avoid similar situations. The feeling, therefore, guides future behavior even if it didn't cause the initial reflex. This informational view of consciousness offers a compelling compromise. The brain does much of the heavy lifting, making rapid, automatic calculations and initiating actions. Consciousness serves as a high-level summary, a bulletin that highlights the most important information for the organism as a whole. This bulletin can then be used for more deliberate, long-term planning. For example, the feeling of regret over a past action may not be able to undo that action, but it can profoundly influence the choices you make for weeks, months, or even years to come. In this way, consciousness can be both a mirror that reflects the present and a compass that helps guide the future. So what are we to conclude from this exploration? The hard and perhaps unsatisfying truth is we do not have a definitive answer. The relationship between the brain and the mind remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in science and philosophy. They are clearly bound together in an intricate dance, a complex symphony, where it is incredibly difficult to determine who is leading and who is following. At times, the brain seems to take the lead with its silent subconscious processes. At other times, our conscious experience appears to be the guiding force that shapes our path forward. The epiphenomenalist idea serves as a powerful and important intellectual tool. It acts as a crucial check on our natural arrogance, reminding us that we should not automatically assume our conscious will is the cause of everything we do. It forces us to look deeper at the neurological underpinnings of our behavior and appreciate the vast amount of processing that occurs beneath the surface of our awareness. However, to declare that consciousness is only a passive byproduct may be to dismiss its role prematurely. The story it tells might be the very thing that helps the system learn, adapt, navigate the complexities of the world. The most promising view may be a holistic one, where the brain and mind are not two separate things but two aspects of a single integrated system. The brain performs its rapid, unconscious computations, while consciousness provides a unified, coherent experience that is broadcast to the entire system. This conscious broadcast allows for reflection-learning strategic planning. Consciousness can be both a reflection of what is happening now and a crucial ingredient in determining what will happen next. It is both a product of the symphony and a force that influences the subsequent movements. In the end, the paradox remains a shimmering, tantalizing puzzle. Our consciousness can feel like the most powerful and immediate force in our lives, yet it might also be a quiet echo of deeper, unseen mechanics. The wonderful thing about this mystery is that it is not a dead end. Instead, it is an open invitation for deeper inquiry and self-exploration. It encourages us to remain curious about the inner workings of our own minds and to keep asking the profound questions. And so, we are left with the thought that lingers, the question that we must continue to ask ourselves. Are we the captain of the ship, or are we the magnificent story the ship tells about its own incredible journey?